Beyond the Noise is back after a 2-week hiatus, and as 2020's bad news cycle unfortunately persists, between yet another horrific black man's murder by police in Kenosha, US, natural disasters springing left, right, and center, and further affecting communities already fatigued by a global pandemic, while there is also Mali. The 3-month-long anti-government protests that rocked the West African country, punctuated by laborious negotiations to end the crisis, took a rather abrupt turn last week. On August 18th, after reports that a mutiny was taking place in a military camp in the outskirts of Bamako, we quickly learned that the then President Ibrahim Boubacar Keita had been taken into custody in Kati. On the same night, Ibeka announced his resignation, and Malians were introduced to the self-titled Council for the Salvation of the People, who announced their takeover on national television. And as the ECOWAS have imposed sanctions on the country, such as the closing of Malian borders to and from other West African nations, and the suspension of financial and trade flows, the way forward for Mali remains open. On this week's Beyond the Noise, we back it up a little to better understand how Mali got to this point, interrogate the power systems at play, decipher truth from fiction, and hear from young voices with a hopeful perspective on the nation's future. Stay with us. Before last week, it had been 8 years since Mali had its last coup d'etat. That is when Captain Amadou Sanogo's infantry took power from outgoing President Amadou Toumani Touré a little before the end of his term. Atete, who, for the record, had himself plotted a coup against Moussa Traoré in 1991. Since 1968, the country has undergone 4 separate coups, which is not all that surprising when you look at the data on a regional level. According to an RFI report, West Africa has recorded over 25 military coups since the 1990s, when the other regions of the continent combined hover around 15. But those numbers, as striking as they may be, aren't that meaningful without understanding what allows for the military to overthrow a government in the first place. In Mali, a succession of significant moments seem to have contributed to the events that we saw unfold on August 18th. On March 25th this year, opposition leader Soumaïla Cissé, who had accused the incumbent of fraud in the previous election, is kidnapped presumably by jihadist militants. A month later, on April 30th, a long-delayed parliamentary election stirs controversy after the Constitutional Court hands 10 additional seats to the ruling party. This sparks a wave of protests and contributes to the creation of the June 5 Movement Coalition, which cements the popular frustration over bad governance, corruption, and a lingering security crisis in the country. Needless to say, the latest coup did not happen in a vacuum, as political analyst Mariama Diallo Dramé reiterated.
Il y a des principes qui sont là, il y a des textes qui sont là que nous devons respecter.
There are principles that were written and made into law. Those need to be respected. In all honesty, no one wishes for a coup, as Republicans is something that we deem sanctionable. Now, in the Malian case, the situation was particularly difficult. We were stuck in an impasse for months. There was a need for a way out. This coup turned out to be that way out, as unfortunate of an alternative as it is. But it also reveals something important. The ECOWAS heads of states had come to Mali, but in my view, they hadn't taken the matter into their own hands. From now on, when such crises occur, it's going to be crucial to be extremely attentive, to listen to all the parties involved, and to take some distance. The truth is, the situation could have been avoided. Unfortunately, everyone stood their grounds. Today, in my view, there is one thing that drives us all, and that is to build institutions solid enough and ethical enough to avoid any military coup in the future.
Entre 2012 et aujourd'hui, 2 coups d'État, ça fait beaucoup.
Now, the last few days have seen waves of conflicting information about the whereabouts of the former president, who has now been released by the junta, the negotiation talks with ECOWAS representatives, and the junta's plan for the transition. And the last point is, unsurprisingly, the most crucial here. On Sunday night, RFI announced that the junta wanted a 3-year military transition. Within minutes, the information was picked up by dozens of news outlets across the world. But the next day, the CSP spokesperson, Colonel Major Wage, denied the information, saying, and I quote, "At no point in time did we decide on a transitional government with a military majority. That is up to the Malian people." Serge Daniel, the RFI correspondent in Mali, who reported the information, remains adamant that the proposition had been made, but that the CSP backpedaled at the last minute. Mariama Diallo Dramé, on the other hand, believes the media should avoid reporting unconfirmed information in such a sensitive moment. I am not going to pass judgment on it because the media is doing its job. However, when we're navigating such a tense period, I believe that it's better not to announce information that are not official. If someone proposes an option in a negotiation that isn't yet concluded, it doesn't make it definitive. It's just a proposal. Because in the end, they've made it clear that anything that concerns the transition will be decided with all the concerned parties.
Avec l'ensemble des forces.
Now, in this week's interview segment, we spoke to Moussa Kondo, country director of the Accountability Lab in Mali. The former Obama fellow shared his perspective on the moment the country is facing, the crucial need for systemic change and the inclusion of new voices in the political debate, and the determination he believes all Malians carry. Well, hi, Moussa, and thank you for being on the show.
Thanks so much for hosting me here. Thanks.
It's my pleasure. So, first and foremost, I read your op-ed on the Washington Post, and I would like for you to maybe elaborate for our audience here about the main takeaway in terms of recommendations for the country, for Mali. It's just undergone a coup d'etat.
As a civil society activist, myself, I've been in the ground, not because I'm engaged in politics or whatever, but I felt myself as a historical moment to be in the street and fight against this corrupt regime. The past 7 years, we've been through with the most and incredible corruption scandals all around the country on a very different level, and all part been involved the president direct collaborators or direct family.
Yeah.
So the coup d'etat happened in this atmosphere. So what made it really easier, without killing, without bloodshedding, without any kind of violence? The military coup happened. So what is next? And the next is not to say Ibeka was wrong or we should organize elections and go to the next level or chase the military back to the barracks. For me, this is not a solution. And the solution is to rethink the society we want. The model of democracy and the governance we want to implement. Everyone is a great, things are really deep. The problem is deep. This cannot happen without inclusiveness and also bring new actors in the game. The new actors in the game means young people and also women voices. They have not been part of the conversation until now. So we have the same group of persons since 1991, military coup and the democratization of the country doing the same thing. If this year they are in opposition, the next year they are in majority, the other year they're in opposition. So that means there is nothing new bringing in the table.
Isn't it already what we're seeing being drawn in those conversations between the junta and the M5, which, if I'm not mistaken, is also composed of some opposition party members who used to be part of the previous government or part of the government. Are you optimistic that new voices are going to be brought in?
The African Union representative and the ECOWAS, the embassies, they are organizing meetings with the neutral actors in the Malian crisis, because they have seen is not always having the same persons around the table who are not the victim of the bad governance we're being through. But when you see the real victims are women and young people who are in the piece, I say the 16 years old, and the age parliamentary is 50 years old. So can you see the gap between these two ages, the group of ages, and see the ones who are victims and will still be victims in the coming 20 or 30 years, and not letting them be part of the conversation? So one of the mistakes I'm afraid, and I've seen the junta going through, is saying we need to make the politician part of the game. I 100% agreed with this, but what kind of politician needs to be in the game? I was marching, protesting with M5, not because I was supporting the same politicians, because they've been a part of the government of Ibeka, they've been part of the all the governments since 1991, right? I've been posting on social media everywhere, say, I'm not going because of these guys. Individually, they have been part of the game since 1991. And politically, all around the country, they have not representative. They are not represented. If they are afraid to get them against them, so they get them in, that means they're starting a new protest, a new problem. This emotional expression is first to celebrate the win, because we have been the fight months before they arrive. If they take this angle or this celebration as to support them to stay in power, that is a huge mistake, and they will learn the quickest and the hardest possible, because we are ready and already thinking to return back to the street. Yeah. And this is maybe through your channel to say to the militaries, all the respect we have for them is for them to respect what they have said since the first night. And we are watching and we are waiting. It's not about love, it's not about hate, it's about what is right.
What do you think is the priority? Is it corruption that is the most deep-seated problem that has superseded regimes? And is it to make sure that security in the country is no longer a threat? Or what is it for you that we have to focus on the most?
For me, the first thing we should think about this is like social justice. Social justice will never happen if we don't have a strong governance point, transparency. The laws should be equal to everyone. And I used to say that we could not pretend to have a democracy where we say everyone is equal in terms of law, in terms of right, etc. And also having the same monarchies in our countries where we have some people who are above the laws. And even the social movement we have in Bamako with workers' unions, they've been hard demanding from the government because they've seen you're saying us as workers to be patient, to keep working, to keep giving the best, to be honest, to work with integrity. And at the same time, we have certain people close to the president, on the president's son, Karim Keita, who is having fun on boards all around the world. Transparency, combating corruption, social justice will make things should be the priorities in this country. So when we have this in the transition, for sure, education will be part of it. We have like more than 900 schools closed right now. This means like 3 million Malians kids who are not going to school.
There are still sanctions that have been put in place against Mali, namely the fact that the borders are still closed. In your point of view, how can you maneuver all these sanctions that are also affecting the people?
ECOWAS was playing its own credibility here in Mali, and they failed. All the sanctions they read on televisions or media, like even five hours after the military coup, they were obliged to abandon everything. They forgot to focus why ECOWAS has been established. Because it should protect people, populations, than be stuck in the constitutions which their own are aware were dysfunctional. They are aware about problems. They are aware about corruption. They are aware about bad governance. They are aware about everything happening here in Mali.
Your response to the argument that a military coup is not the solution to like how you disavow a government and you have to wait till the next election, for you it's not a valid enough argument?
It's not at all. Why? Because if the government, if ECOWAS wanted to respect and be respectful to the constitution, they would not let this person mismanage the institutions. The institution is part of the constitutional. We had like 5 biggest corruption scandals in Mali. Where was ECOWAS
when that was happening? Yeah.
Even not a communique to say we condemn what is happening because this is not part of the procedure of governance, sign it in the ECOWAS space. Now Ibeka is gone. What is Mali? Nothing changed. We're living every day, as yesterday, as 1 month ago, as 2 months ago. Mm-hmm. But now the only difference is we're living with a hope like tomorrow could be better.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. Well, that's all we have for this week. The situation in Mali is a developing story, so we'll be following it closely. So make sure you monitor my Twitter and my Instagram for the latest information on this story. Thank you so much for watching. As usual, stay safe, and I'll see you again next week.